Here. Welcome to the boat show, guys. Thanks for coming and checking out our seminar. So we have about 45 minutes of a seminar. If you have any questions throughout, you can certainly throw up your hand and we'll do our best to answer them. We'll also stop after we have a budget portion, so we'll also stop then and answer some questions kind of midway. So we'll get started.
I know for Shelly and I this is kind of special because our first date was coming to the boat show, so it's like 18 years later. You know, I'm a little fatter, we got the kids, a lot more white hair, but...
Full circle.
Yeah.
All right. A single sentence said on the sofa, "Let's do the Great Loop." And 4 months later, we're off. Little did we know, McKenna learned about the trip that night as well.
Hi, my name is McKenna, and this is how I found out about the trip. When I first found out about this trip, it was late at night when I was supposed to be asleep. And I was on my phone just chilling, and my parents were watching a show out in the living room. Then they suddenly turned off the TV and were talking about this trip. I had no idea what this trip was or even about, but as I listened, it seemed very serious about it. And when they're serious about something, that means we're most likely will be doing it. And that made me scared because I did not want to leave my friends for an entire year. So I was running in circles frantically in my room. Somehow they did not hear me. I don't know how they did not hear me freaking out. And the next day my parents told me. Of course I already knew, but when they told me, my stomach had butterflies. My sister was ecstatic and very happy, but I had very mixed emotions. Back then, that's how I felt. But now looking back, this was the best news I could ever hear. There was so many amazing things to see and to experience.
My name is Shelly. This is my husband, Luke. My oldest daughter is McKenna. She's 14. And my youngest daughter, Kinley, she's 11. We also have 2 dogs that can't be here today. They also looped with us. The Great Loop was something that we didn't think would be possible until we retired. Financially, we thought that the burden would be too great. I started looking at our available funds and the boat that we owned and what we might need financially before we left. It turns out that my initial budget was a mere 15% off from what we actually spent. So I'm pretty proud of that. Today we're going to go over some of the numbers and the way that we save money while looping on a budget. So Luke and I met in 2004. I was bouncing around figuring out life and had just relocated to Mississauga. My parents had just returned from their own Great Loop adventure. So fun fact, this makes me a 2nd generation looper and my kids a 3rd generation looper. As winter approached, my parents told me they had a deal for me. So I was 22, I was broke, I was completely open to a deal. They said, you know what? You can live on our boat in the winter, import credit. As long as you look after it, you can live there for free. So this was a custom 55-foot steel trawler, and this was my first taste of caring for a boat. I was living the dream. No, I was not. Luke and I met shortly after, and I asked him, I said, hey, you want to come over to my place for a date? And I'm pretty sure he didn't think that he'd be showing up to this. So as I'm walking down the dock, I'm kind of looking at his face, because I knew that this was going to set the tone for our entire relationship.
Yeah. I think she handed me a paintbrush because it was an all-steel boat, you know, get to work. So this was our first boat. This is the KMV center console. This is what got our feet wet. Next, we ended up getting a cuddy cabin with the arrival of Kinley in 2011. We quickly learned that boating with toddlers and having no bathroom on a boat wasn't a lot of fun. So Shelly saw an ad on Kijiji for a Carver Santiago. They accepted our offer, and this became our first cruising boat. We loved boating, and our needs and wants grew. In 2018, we upgraded to a Carver 3807.
Things are getting bigger, guys.
So we thought we had it all figured out. We had bathrooms, we had a full kitchen. We were going to actually do the loop on this boat, but in early 2021, friends of ours approached us telling us that they were going to sell O. Henry. Shelley and I had a quick conversation about it, and just before the trip, we decided to purchase O. Henry, and this became our loop boat. And she is a 4788 Bayliner pilot house. So as you can see, we had a small obsession with boating since the beginning. Our training ground was on the waters of Georgian Bay, not a lot of room for error. While some of you might think 13 years experience taught me all that I needed to know, you'd be wrong. Most of our boating style wasn't really geared to anchoring out. In fact, the longest we had actually gone out on the boat was really only 2 weeks prior to the trip. I remember when I announced the trip to friends, they kind of laughed at me because, like most boaters, we only really traveled out in a 30-mile radius from our home port. And when our friends would always bug us to go visit them, they were 40 miles away, and I always said it was too far. And then we ended up doing 6,500 miles. But we always, so we really had close to zero experience anchoring out. Most of our kind of boating style was gearing towards tying to the rocks. So we had a few spots on Georgian Bay that we would do this.
Our first anchoring mishap actually happened in this boat. What do you mean you don't just throw the anchor, walk away? Like, that's it, right? Well, I can tell you that after throwing that anchor over 300 times, there's a little bit more to just throwing the anchor, walking away, especially if you want to sleep at night. This brings us to our first looping budget category, anchoring. This category is the #1 way you can control your budget on the loop. On the loop, we spent less than $4,000 in marinas. That works out to about 15 nights. If we do a quick calculation, the average dock looper would spend roughly $35,000, which is $100 a night for the year. From other boaters, we've heard that this budget can skyrocket. Your average dock for the full circle runs around $2.50 a foot, so you really can simply make this number as high or as low as you want. You do, however, need to gain experience and become comfortable with the process. A lot of loopers that we ran into, they were in awe of the experience, but either they didn't trust their ground tackle or they didn't think that they had enough experience to do it, and so they didn't commit to it. As you can see from the name of our seminar, we were encouraged by our bank account. So we didn't really have a choice.
So learning how to anchor out safely, securely, and confidently didn't come overnight for us, but we knew by doing this trip, we would have to embrace this. In the first few weeks, we were really lucky. We were with a group of friends out in the little current area, and they taught us a few things. But I'll never forget the first night that they left to go back to work, and Shelley and I were on our own. It was a little overwhelming at first, but before the trip, we had upgraded our ground tackle to all chain and an anchor one size up. Looking back on this was probably one of our best money-saving moves we could have done before the trip. So we outfitted our boat with 175 feet of chain. I would suggest doing 200 feet, and we had a Bruce-style anchor. These are a few anchorages that we were in kind of along the way. So we did a fun tie here, stern to stern. This was down around Pickwick. Of course, the raft, we've all done that before. This was just a stern tie to shore, and then at night I just undid it and we floated out to the bay.
Keep the riprap off the
We
boat.
used this a lot on the river system. So we'd have a boat drop an anchor out front, and then we would bring the boats back together and tie up. It kind of allowed us to not swing out to where the tows and the barges were, and it kind of secured you so you could sleep at night, because these barges weigh about 100 tons. So they can't stop, and you definitely don't want to be in their way. And of course the solo anchor, when you've had too many dock tails and you just need to be alone, right? So this bruise you can kind of learn on the fly.
Okay, so how do you sleep when you're on anchor? We use an app called Anchor Pro in conjunction with Navionics. In the first picture, you can see that this represents a perfect anchorage. The lines are tight, there's no movement except for around in a circle. This anchorage was recorded in a wind event in the Bahamas. Other boats were not so lucky this evening. They let loose and gracefully floated past us. If you're not waking up at least once on the trip with a fellow vessel laying on the air horn saying, oh Henry, we're gonna hit you. Like, are you really having fun? Well, it didn't happen often. I encourage you to sleep clothed on a windy night. In this second picture, you can see this particular anchorage was not as successful. We monitored and eventually had to reset the anchor. I would note that we will never leave the boat unless we're confident that we have a good set. In this next picture, we're screwed. So we started our anchor right here, and where the red arrow is represents over a mile. So this screenshot was taken during our encounter in a tornado in Punta Gorda on December 21st. In this instance, we had no choice but to allow the anchor to drag and hope that it would catch. We had a little bit of room between us and the bridge. However, waiting for this to happen seemed to take forever. In this particular situation, as I said, we were over a mile that we dragged. This is one instance where I would have thrown the budget out the window. I would have paid anything to be in a marina. December 21st, we're about an hour into the storm. We have about another 2 hours to go. So far, about 6 sailboats, I believe, have let loose. There's a trawler. You can see it straight ahead. He has let loose and he is driving and trying to stay stationary with his motors. There's another sailboat that there are people on. It's pan. We are now dragging. Our anchor is now dragging. We are trying to hold it out and see if we're going to be okay letting it drag. Oh boy. Yeah, there's some people that are in real desperate situations right now, including us, actually. Gotta stay calm for the kids.
You're running your engine. When you start like sing this, and when you start the
This is bad. 100%. So we had our engines running for about 4 hours at anchor this day. We actually thought that if we bumped it into gear that might help us with the dragging, but in fact that was a really bad idea. So when we bumped it into gear, it actually turned us sideways and then we were taking the waves broadside. So we definitely, we had them going in case we had to literally cut anchor and bail, which one guy, he was in a trawler and he rode out for, he was riding it for about 3 hours before it calmed down enough that he could pull it into marina. We went and talked to him a few days later and he was just, like, he was done. He could barely walk. Like, it was rough out there. I mean, videos obviously don't really show always, you know, what it really was, but it was bad.
I mean, if you do get stuck in a storm like that, you're gonna always assess the situation. This was it was a 90-mile-an-hour wind, so it really had the boat pinned straight, so we were kind of cutting it with the bow of the boat. So, as the weeks went by, we became more confident, and we learned to set our anchor allowance in the Anchor Pro app. If the wind direction changed, we would only be alerted if we were outside our circle allowance in the app. We even got better at this once we hit areas with tide and current. We would typically use 2 devices. Just in case one failed, we had a backup. If we did leave the boat, we would leave one phone on the boat running the app, take the other phone with us, and then it would alert us if there was any sort of problem through an email. This was really good, just doing a shore excursion and knowing that everything back at the boat was fine and that, you know, there was never a situation there that we had to go back for. During the whole trip, we only had about 4 times where we had to do a reset on the anchor. Most of them happened during the day, but there was one at night. It was out in the Bahamas. Shelley and I I picked the marina, or I picked the spot to stay, which failed. There was choice words that were said, and we had to do a reset in the middle of the night.
His apologies the next morning.
Yeah, we did come across people during a big storm. We went and harbored in Big Major. It's just a big bay out in Bahamas, and we did one anchor watch that night, and there were boats that were dragging, hitting other boats, but for us, everyone around us was fine, and we had enough chain and rowed it out, and we were okay. So
Channel 16 on a windy night is entertainment.
Yeah.
Not really great entertainment, but sometimes entertainment.
So we used the Anchor Pro app with the alarm to wake us up for a year. Shelley now uses it to get her out of bed for work. She finds it so effective, she just hops right up. After a year on the boat, it's something you don't want to hear, trust me.
So this alarm will make you jump out of bed clothed or not, hence the sleeping with clothed on windy nights. Yep, it's true. Both Luke and I ran out completely naked to see a sailboat just sailing on by, feet away from the boat. Oh, Henry, I'm gonna hit you. Okay. One of the main factors in anchoring successfully is weather. Through our trip, our tolerance of wind and waves increased. However, as from the video, we didn't always get it right. While living on the boat, you must check the weather several times a day, be on your toes for changes not forecasted. In the video you just watched, the forecast was 30 knot wind. So we found this acceptable for our ground tackle. We did have a car on shore that we had access to, which is pretty rare on the loop, but we decided, no, we're gonna stay on the boat just in case things go sideways. Well, we literally did go sideways, so it was a good thing we were on the boat for that. Had we known, I would have paid anything to be in a marina, like forget the budget, take my money. These are some of the apps that we used: Windy, Wind Finder, and Predict Wind. On the Great Loop, there's other options to anchoring and marinas. Along the way, there are free docks, city day docks, and ways to get free docks. Sometimes, as seen here, you have to get creative to fit. So we pulled in and we spanned 3 fingers because we were obviously too long to go the other way. And we enjoyed land access to the town of Peoria. So this was a city dock. They actually provided power as well. It was one of the nicer ones that we had the opportunity of staying at, even though we were a little too big for it. In this next video, this was an unplanned stop at a local seafood shop. And this is a great example of a free day dock where we were able to get provisions. And also we had some looper magic happen. November 28th on North of 45, we're in Florida. So I found this fresh seafood place, and they have a little dock, so we have pulled in, and I got some fresh shrimp, some sushi grade tuna that we're just gonna eat straight up, and some reds. I think they call them like Gulf Reds. They're like a sweet shrimp, and you can only get them for about 90 miles. So I also got a pound of those. We're traveling with Happy Place here today, and there's only room for one, so we raft it off so that we could both stop in. And at the bait shop, there was a kind gentleman that I didn't even have the boat pulled in yet, and he offered his truck to go and get groceries. So we borrowed his truck and we drove up. There's a Publix about, like a 2-minute drive up the road. And so we sent the boys to go get some groceries. We don't need a lot, but just a couple little things. And yeah, super cool little place. I love it. So you'll find that through your trip, people want to be a part of your trip. People want to be involved, they want to help. We were offered vehicles, come to our place for dinner, we just want to talk with you, which really actually made the trip really special. So that is honestly the best part of the trip, is the people. So to find all these free docks, protected anchorages, and restaurants, we used a combination of Waterway Guide as well as Active Captain. Sometimes even a Google search would provide a free dock or somewhere to go. If we docked at a restaurant and planned to have dinner there, 9 times out of 10 they would allow us to stay there for free for the night. Obviously, I would check with management before you get into the margaritas to make sure that they're not going to push you along after dinner. But this video that you see here, this is one of our favorite free docks provided by a restaurant. We went for dinner, and we also got a Walmart grocery delivery.
May 5th on north of 45. Cinco de Mayo, everybody. We
may have already had a few margaritas by the time this video was taken.
I'm going to show you the name because I'm super excited about this. Water's Edge Restaurant. They have agreed to allow us to stay the evening, which is super awesome. And we are in the center of, what did he call it, Luke?
I don't even know.
Something party zone.
We're in the party zone of, I guess, really, South Carolina.
South Carolina.
Not the North Carolina, the South Carolina.
So, we're here, we're gonna go out for dinner, and we got some groceries coming super soon. Walmart delivery, we're gonna bring them in through that ramp right there, which that ramp. So I'm pretty excited about that. What do you think, Luke? Winner chicken dinner?
Winner chicken dinner.
$4 margaritas?
I found this place, by the way.
You did. High five.
I think I did okay.
Nailed it. $4 margaritas sold me right away.
Nobody on the loop is having as much fun as us right now.
Sometimes there are also anchorages that provide a dinghy dock. These are a fabulous option. They allow you to anchor out and bring your dinghy in to shore for shopping, entertainment, or simply just getting off the boat. You can also check with marinas. Sometimes they'll offer a dinghy dock either free or a low charge. But definitely you want to make sure that you bring a lock just to deter any unwanted attention to your dinghy.
Okay, so anchoring can save you money, but dogs. Remember those 2 crew that we had on board? Well, for us, luckily, they were fairly trainable, and this was a lifesaver. We had an artificial grass patch on the front of the boat. They would go use it, I would rinse it down, and life was good. When stopping for a night, it meant that I wouldn't have to launch the dinghy, to take them to shore, to let them do their business. Not to mention, sometimes it's not always possible to do that. These are some friends of ours that required a short trip with their dog, not something that you really want to deal with just before bed. We also ran into a couple that intended on anchoring out a lot more. However, their dog would not go anywhere but land. Ironically, the dog's name was Marina. I don't know, coincidence? You be the judge.
While anchoring can save you a lot of money, marinas also have their place in this trip. When we pulled into marinas, we would look for benefits such as free laundry, courtesy cars, and bikes. Courtesy cars are often of the special kind. You've seen them. Sometimes pliers for the handle, they get you there and usually halfway back. A courtesy car can afford a luxury that only a looper will understand. We use these cars to source parts, to get cheaper grocery stores, and to go out for dinner with friends. I would recommend that the second that your boat gets to the dock, go to the head office and request a time on the courtesy cars. It's an amenity that goes very quickly, so you definitely want to get your name on the list and be prepared to share, because 9 times out of 10, it's going to be you and 3 other couples, and you're going to have groceries loaded to the ceiling. Yeah. For us, marinas were typically a day of work, usually entailed provisioning, washing the boat, doing laundry, gaining local knowledge from the marina staff or other boaters in the marina. The power that a marina can offer allowed us to bring our battery banks to a full charge, cook large meals, and ultimately just do tasks that were power hungry. To run the generator to complete all of these tasks often would offset with a marina at $1 a foot. Commonly found heading down the river southbound, not so much in Florida. So in Florida, you're definitely cheaper to run your generator. Be sure to ask for Boat US and America's Great Loop Cruising Association discounts if you're a member.
So fuel. For us, this was the most expensive thing on the trip. It's something that you have far less control over than anchoring in marinas. On O. Henry, we spent $14,000 US on diesel. We traveled just about 6,400 miles, and for us that was about 900 helm hours. Since this is the most expensive item on the trip, we came up with a few little things that will help ease the pain.
So the waterway guide was one of our main tools for controlling this. In this slide, you'll see that the fuel price in the green circle is $4.39 a gallon. But just across the bay, in the red circle, it's $6.41 per gallon. Simply by looking at the waterway guide for the cheapest fuel would have saved us $350 in this instance. I would review the waterway guide almost daily and work out our fuel stops to plan ahead. While the waterway guide is pretty good, I would always suggest you call for a bit availability and correct pricing. There is nothing worse than showing up at a marina to get fuel. You're like, oh, I got the best deal, like we're pulling in. And I'm like, what's the price of diesel? And I'm expecting like $3.80. Oh, miss, that's $5.65 today. Crap. So I would suggest calling and confirming before you commit. Things to also consider are different states and their taxes. If a fuel fill-up was only a few days out, but the next state has a cheaper tax, it's worth it to plan to wait for the next state. Availability as well as marinas and rules are a consideration. Some marinas will post a lower price, but it's only available if you stay the night. Some marinas will post a price, but if you're not a member, they're not giving you any fuel at all. So the bottom line is make the call. As noted before, always ask for any discounts that you might be eligible for. Some marinas offer free pump outs with fuel or a stay, so it's always good to ask that. You know, $20 here, $20 there, it all adds up. And speaking of pump outs, we try to combine pump outs with our fuel and water fill up. A marina is much more excited to help you with poop and water if you're spending the bucks on fuel. There are some marinas going up the East Coast that will only let you put water in as long as you're fueling. We made this a great opportunity to make friends with the staff and slow down the whole process so we could get a full tank of water.
I excelled at doing that just to buy us time. So the other way to control your fuel bill is to know your hull speed. This is going to be different for every boat. The hull speed is just the mathematical equation that dictates the most economic speed to run your boat at. We found that on our boat, 1,250 RPMs was the perfect speed. That gave us a speed of about 8.5 to 9 miles an hour. While being typically like a weekend warrior, we would race to get out to places that we wanted to go for the weekend. Where on the loop, it's more of a marathon than a race. So staying at your hull speed is going to save you thousands of dollars. We did meet friends of ours, Jack and Joe. They would beat me to every stop, but he would also fill up at every stop. And so when I talked to him, Jack would always joke with me, and he'd say, well, Luke, I'm just buying myself a nap. So Shelly and I joke with us, when we do the loop again when we're older, we may be so inclined to buy ourselves a nap too once in a while. So now here is our exact fuel stats. So that's how many miles we drove, 63. We did 3,200 gallons of fuel. We spent 14,313. And our average price that we filled up at was $4.40, and our fuel burn was a whopping 1.8 miles per gallon. So yeah.
Super excited. Yes.
Which year was that?
This was 2021, 2022. So we just got back this August 2022.
Yeah.
All right. So you're anchoring, you're hunting for the best fuel prices, but with so much time at anchor, how are you filling your fridge? How are you getting your provisions? Provisioning on the go can be difficult. It can also get costly when you have a very small selection of stores at your disposal. We obtain provisions several ways. Our most common way was this setup, an electric bike with a wagon. So if we were at anchor, this would mean loading this up, folding it up, putting it in our dinghy, going to shore, running to get provisions, coming back, and it was a process, for sure. This is something to keep in mind when you're purchasing your form of transportation, which we definitely recommend. This is nice and small, fits on the boat, and if it's just the two of you traveling as opposed to a family of four, you can easily fit 2 bikes in your dinghy. This next video is headed back to the boat with a full cart of provisions. As you can see, this little setup has an excellent towing capacity. I would often fill it with over 100 pounds, and I'd make it back to the boat no problem. And it lives to see another day, surprisingly.
Northern 45, July 9th. Shelly got groceries at No Frills. All right, Shelly, hit it. Hit it. Do a burnout. Oh yeah, fix your kickstand.
Every time that
Gonna
goes
crash.
My wife always drove away with the kickstand down.
I did it this
Every
morning.
time. Every time.
Accidents.
She still does it.
Watch that car. And we never saw her again.
When the stores are too far away or inaccessible, we use Walmart delivery. So Walmart has unlimited deliveries for about $12 a month. We use this service often. We would pick an address nearby and have the driver call us for more detailed directions. We would then meet him with our cart or dinghy or whatever the case may be and pick everything up. It took a little planning. However, I would run a cart, as we ran out of things, I would put things in a cart, and as soon as I saw an opportunity, it would click, and 2 hours later, my fridge is full. Perfect. Pro tip, Walmart will deliver liquor, beer, and water, which is something that you don't want to haul back in your cart as it's heavy. If you can get somebody else to haul it, perfect. This next video is probably my greatest feat of having something delivered. So we're actually in New York City, and we were anchored just in behind the Statue of Liberty, which was awesome. And these items were delivered just to a launch ramp, right, maybe a 5-minute dinghy ride away from us.
Short dinghy ride, not far.
No.
Hey guys, Luke here on Northern 45. Well, I did some purchases. Just came down the ramp here. And we got the boat loaded up with some bikes for the girls. And some Pepsi.
And they were assembled.
And whatever. So now I gotta get back over there. Because behind me is the Statue of Liberty. And I'm gonna try not to get the bikes that are brand new too salty. Wish me luck.
Now we had one last trick up our sleeves. The best kind of provisions are the one that fly right into the back of your boat.
October 14th at Tall Timbers Marina, north of 45. So guys, we had an interesting event happen this afternoon. We had a Asian car grace us with its presence. He jumped right into the back of the boat. So we decided that we are going to eat him for dinner. So I'm gonna clean him up and we're gonna cook him. And I'm gonna let you know how he tastes. Look at him, he's an ugly little buggers. And they jump crazy. So this is an invasive species, but I am told that they are actually good eating. So I'll report back and I'll let you know.
So we did eat this for dinner. and it was excellent. It is actually a firm, flaky white meat. The bones are large, so while there's lots of them, they're easy to get out. Don't let the invasive species fool you, they are delicious. If I was doing this trip again, I would actually go out of my way to have these jump into my boat and fill my freezer for provisioning for Bahamas. You will find that provisioning from anchor can be difficult at times. We used Google Satellite to find clearing areas where we could pull up a boat. So sometimes there isn't a dock, there isn't a place that you can pull up to. So you can see here that there's a road that comes out to the waterway. So this is in Miami. Miami is extremely difficult. Marinas, you'll get fined if you even drop somebody off at a marina. So this was in Miami, so we're really happy to find this. So the road came up to the water, and then we would pull our dinghy up here. We were actually anchored in this little round bay here. We would pull up the dinghy, Luke would drop me off in my trusty little setup here, and I would go and get groceries or whatever we needed. So Google Satellite is definitely a really good tool to find those little paths to get in somewhere. So sometimes we would tide ashore, hike the bank. Other times we would lock the dinghy under a bridge. Sometimes you needed to be creative. Once you found the spots, it's pretty typical that they were already a beaten path. So like, they're out there, you just have to know what you're looking for. On a side note, once you're in tidal waters, this is something you need to consider. So we went out for dinner one night, again in Miami, and we're like, yeah, we found this like little rickety post to pull up to. We're like, this is perfect. So we go out for dinner, awesome. We come back to the boat, I'm like, where's the boat? That's 8 feet down. How am I getting in the boat?
Yeah.
We ended up getting in the boat, we're all good, but that's something that you definitely want to consider once you're in tidal water, that
I'm not exactly Mr. Gymnastics, so I kind of had to hold on and help everyone down, but we made it. So the next big category is maintenance. I'll tell you, I wish I had a magic ball to tell me what was going to break and what I needed to bring. You know, things are going to happen. Try and have a positive attitude. Shelley was really good at this. Before the trip, I had like a basic knowledge. It was pretty good, but this was kind of our first diesel boat. If you're not a mechanic, don't worry. On this trip, there's lots of spots along the way that are going to help you out. There's different stores and marinas that will support you. Typically, anything can be fixed. It's just a matter of how much it's going to cost. So my best advice on this trip is to do daily checks. Check your fluid, go down into the room, your engine bay, have a look around, see if anything's out of place, look for leaks. By doing just this one simple task every day, this can make or break your trip. By finding something that's going to happen catastrophically down the road, that could cost you thousands in dollars and time delays.
May 19th on North 45. So, I got it. Hatches are open, engine bay is being worked on yet again. So we, when we were coming over and going up on step and troubleshooting our RPM issue, we blew our coolant, or I guess they call it a water pump, as well. So Luke, on his standard checks, noticed that we had no coolant. So we still had coolant in the block, but
Found the coolant, it just happened to be in the build.
right, we didn't lose the coolant, it just was relocated to the bilge, which is obviously not the right place. So we got a ride from Lynn, who is friends with Arcadia, that we met
Another little bit
in
of river
Elizabeth
magic
City.
here.
And had a campfire last night. Anyway, so Lynn drove us around all over town today to find the parts that we need. So we found everything, and it's up and going.
So I had antifreeze, just didn't have enough. Awesome. All the coolant, which when I took off the pump, it all pours out.
can't
Yeah,
really hear.
we
Sorry, guys.
caught it.
Checks, guys.
We caught it. We caught it before it was a big issue. So we now have a new pump on. We're going to do a quick test run, which is about an hour up to Annapolis.
Those shorts were in
And
one
hopefully
piece when we
everything's
left.
good.
Just note that.
And
My favorite
then
pair of shorts.
last night, I went to the bathroom in the vacuum flush, and our bellow blew. So that job has not been done yet, but I was also able to source the parts for that locally, and so now we have a shitty job also.
So my job is done. Shelly's job.
Right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes, I am in line for the shitty job.
When we made these videos, I didn't realize I'd be putting, doing the boat show. Sorry about the language.
So, on this trip, and over my span of boating, if I hired a mechanic, I would always be right there with them, trying to learn as much so that next time if something happens, I would do it myself. And this is what I've done over the last 13 years of my boating career. Though I don't want to mention all the things that I brought on the trip, I had lots of spare parts, but there was many times we had to source things out. Shelley was really good at getting things to the boat. I remember one time we were in the Trent, and she got me a breaker delivered right to the Trent, and we were with her dad. We found the problem, and like literally 2 hours later, the part's getting delivered by a guy, and her dad's like,
how did you do this?
he's just like sitting there like, what? Okay. So you can do it. I do want to list one thing that we did bring on the trip, kind of food for thought. Your generator on this trip is going to be really important. And we brought a spare backup generator. Just a suitcase generator. It was 2,000 watts, just a little generator inverter. And when we were out in Bahamas, which was for us the big trip to get out there and see that beauty, we found that our main generator broke down. And so this would have meant us going back to the US and getting it fixed. But luckily I had that spare generator and we were able to use it and still enjoy the whole trip and do 1,000 miles out there. We relied on this suitcase generator basically coming back the whole East Coast and back into Canada.
I got really good at cooking things on one burner. So for about, I would say about 3 months of the trip, all I had for cooking was one induction burner.
Yeah.
So we made it work, it's okay.
Yeah, keep in mind, I mean, it's an adventure, right? You know?
So you've got this. You're anchoring, you're free dog hopping, you're hunting fuel, you're fixing things prior to catastrophic failure. The big question, how much did it cost us? So as you can see here, our diesel, as discussed before, a little over 14,000. Our slips and moorings, a little under 4,000. This includes our fees for the Trent Severn Waterway, groceries and household. This is for a family of 4. It also included our rum budget. Entertainment, just under 5,000. Repairs and maintenance, just over 12,000. This included a switch from a lead acid battery bank to a lithium battery bank. So that was about $5,000 to $6,000. I made Luke do it in like 24 hours before we left for Bahamas. So the crunch was on. Luckily, he did an awesome job. And we only burnt out one alternator.
I put my Superman shirt on before I did that job and I got to work, so, you know.
Clothing and gifts, just under $2,500. As you can see by his shorts, we probably should have increased that budget maybe a little bit. Transportation, $2,700. This included $1,800 when we were laid up. So after the tornado, we had some significant damage to the boat. So we were laid up in Miami for about 3 weeks, so we had to rent a car. Insurance, boat, and health, just over $11,000. So we were the first Canadian vessel in 2022 that was issued a cruising permit. So we were cruising permit 001. 2021. That is a story for later. So we were the first vessel allowed after COVID. Because of that, there was one insurance company that would insure us. And so it was either pay the price or don't go, which was not an option because we already rented our house and sold our cars. So we were locked in. So the total trip was 86,800 Canadian dollars. So this next budget, this is, if you remember the boat I mentioned earlier, Happy Place. So this was a couple. They were on a trawler with a single Ford Lehman diesel Tucka engine, and they did it for a total of just over $33,000, so almost half of what we did it in. You'll note that the biggest differences here are the fuel prices and obviously their groceries. I don't think they drank as much rum as we did.
Now that we've given you some budget suggestions, we would like to share with you what we believe are must-haves on this trip. An oversized anchor with all-chain road, as my dad mentioned. A folding grocery cart, it saves your bag. Also makes it so I don't have to carry groceries all the way back to the boat. Some form of transportation for all members of your crew, like me. We suggest electric. This will allow you to see more on the trip. GPS tablet or integrated navigation. We did the whole trip on our phones, but we do not recommend it.
I do not recommend this.
My mom's phone had heart attacks a lot.
We had 2 really cheap phones and they made the whole trip and we didn't have any issues, but it could have ended really badly. That's okay.
A good house bank of batteries. We had lithium batteries, but solar panels would be nice too. Autopilot, nice to have for longer days of travel, and a reliable internet. My mom found one on eBay for $100 a month.
So I would also, we had people come into our marina just before we left, and they had just completed the trip, and they said to us, if we could give you guys any advice, they said the one thing we would suggest is don't plan more than 3 days out. And Shelley and I kind of thought about that, but that kind of became our motto the whole trip. If we tried to plan something too far ahead, the weather would change or something would happen along the way, whether it's like maintenance, or it could be anything, or even in fact if we were just enjoying ourselves at the stop that we were at. So we really never planned much more than that, and it kind of broke the trip down into kind of like little segments, so you were never really getting too overwhelmed. You know, people would tell us things at different stops, like you really should check this out. And I think for us, we got to enjoy the trip even more because we would find things out and then kind of take the time to look at that stop and kind of, you know, get a real feel of, you know, what we were doing at each location. And the last thing I would say is have a sense of humor. You know, there's going to be times that you're going to laugh. There's going to be times you're going to cry on the trip. And we joke that if you can't do either, just have a drink.
So my final Facebook post really sums it up. Do I cry? Do I laugh? What do I do? Well, we're officially gold loopers. Hello, gold flag. This is the most expensive flag I've ever bought in my life. Where do I start? Well, we slid in on budget, or at least we didn't run out of money. The stories, the ups, the downs, the sense of accomplishment that a trip like this comes with. We've traveled and lived aboard for exactly a year. When we set out with our 2 kids and 2 dogs, there was actually bets against us. Were you guys part of those bets? I think you were. That we wouldn't make it back. But I can tell you that all 4 of us are here today, and we did not lose a dog overboard. A couple of close calls. While I sit here in our home port, I'm not sure that it's really sunk in what we've just accomplished. From one day sitting on the couch to the next, life being thrown into a frenzy. Packing the house for rent, selling our vehicles, selling the boat that we planned on looping with, and then buying our Henry. Telling my kids that this year's school is going to be a little bit different. As a family, we're forever changed. We've learned that nothing is impossible. Living on a boat is not an easy life. How much water do we have? Oh, I really need to go to the bathroom. Are we good for a pump out? Can you go check? Is there enough fuel? Where's my next grocery stop? Where can I secure a broken part? Are the batteries charged? Is the weather going to try and kill me today? So many things that need to be monitored, but with work comes the amazing. Hey Mom, I'm petting a shark. Look, a sea turtle. Whoa, thousands of iguanas here. Check out these shells. Look at that beach. Look at that barge. Oh my gosh, it's coming right for us. Is it on the 1 whistle or the 2? Looping on a budget can be challenging, but it offers many opportunities that you otherwise might not see or experience. The challenges were 100% worth the effort to be able to loop with our kids. Had we waited for retirement for a little bit more money, we wouldn't have had the experience as a family, which, to be honest, I would not change for the world. Yeah, we did it a little on the budget side. Probably the next time we go around, we might be inclined to do a few more marinas, a few more, costly things. But to be able to do it with these guys, awesome.
So this next video is kind of a funny one. This is us about 10 days prior to the trip leaving.
Okay, it is, what's the date? Oh my god, I don't even know anymore. July 26th on north of 45. We have cut open the entire floor. So this is our old poop tank. We've now measured and are working on getting a quote for a new poop tank. Folks, we are moving on board in 10 days. And right now, this is our life. So
This is my best part.
We got this.
It's coming up.
they're definitely starting to doubt some of our
There
so hopefully we can get this fixed and hopefully we can be on our way.
What can I say? It's a boat. It threw one last job at me before we left. But can you do this trip? Yes, you can. Time is precious and we can't make more of it, but what you can make is memories. So thanks for coming out, guys. If you have any questions, we can field some now if you guys have any things about our stats and want to know some more stuff about the trip.
Yes?
Were you constrained by the hurricane season, like in terms of insurance and everything else? Like,
Yes.
How did it work out?
We were. So we were only allowed to come into the Gulf after a certain date, and we were only allowed to come up after a certain date. So yes, there were definitely constraints with the insurance.
Does that change, or does those days change, or are they fixed?
No, they're pretty standard. I don't want to quote the exact date because I can't remember, but I think that we had to stay north of a certain parallel until I want to say it was like November. I don't know the exact date though, and each insurance company might be slightly different, so I would definitely check with your insurance company. So my husband and I took a leave of absence for a year. This would, in my opinion, be a difficult trip to do while you're working. There's a lot involved. And the kids, because it was COVID, they actually just signed in online and went to school, so we were off the hook. Like, it was good. Yes?
How many storms did we encounter?
So,
We did a big, we also did the extended trip out to Bahamas. Out there's mainly a lot of anchorages that you're anchoring at. We rode out a couple storms.
I would say that there was two notable storms that scared the crap out of me. One was a tornado, and one we were at Big Sail Key in Bahamas, and we had no cell service. We couldn't check what was happening, and a major thunderstorm came upon us, and actually the boat beside us got hit by lightning. So that was scary.
But it's going to give you lots of stories for a lifetime for the grandkids, come on.
If there's any other questions, we'll go off stage because I know that there's somebody else that's coming up. You had one more?
Yeah, what's the internet on your boat?
What's that?
What do you use for internet?
What internet? So Starlink wasn't out at the time, so we used multiple ones. When we were in Bahamas, they used a Live down there. It was just like a little internet dongle. My wife got one off eBay. I think that was through Verizon. And then we used Bell when we were in Canada.
Thank you.
But that was only for a short time, just off our cell phones. Verizon was good all through the States, but then I had to switch over in Bahamas. So we ended up driving all the way down to Georgetown to just pick up this a live internet, basically. And it worked everywhere. It was really good.